Hello, and welcome to our first workshop for the Memory Lab Network called Your Digital Afterlife. This is a personal archiving workshop, or what to do with your personal digital files before something happens. Now, this is our first workshop for our Memory Lab, which will be opening in the near future. And the Memory Lab is a personal do-it-yourself digitization station for obsolete media. So if you have old videotapes of, let's say, family events or, let's say a high school football game and you don't have a VCR anymore, well, we will have an option for you to make a digital copy of that in the near future. Now, the Memory Lab Network is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the funds are administered by the Washington, D.C. Public Library. And so there's a collection of public libraries throughout the United States that have these memory labs, and our goal is to teach personal archiving to the public. And so locally, the Tulare County Library and the Tulare County Museum out at Mooney Grove are both collaborating on bringing the Memory Lab Network to the Annie R. Mitchell History Room at the Pixley Branch Library. Now, this workshop is a personal archiving workshop, like I said, and we will be going over what are digital files, what are digital assets, digital accounts, how do you manage that, and how do you prepare for handing those things down to your heirs or your executors, and basically your stuff, how do you pass that on? And we will be talking about some legal information. And I do have to point out, I'm not a lawyer, but we do have a lot of information from lawyers who are specializing in digital estate planning, and we will be talking about that later on. So our first slide will be, will future historians consider these days the digital dark ages? Now, this is an article on NPR, and I would definitely seek that out if you're interested in learning more. But it's basically, we have a lot of information, and the challenges that we have to think about is, how do we pass on these digital files so that future generations are able to look at them and interpret them and make that part of the historical record? And the big questions that are coming up is that, are we doing enough to preserve our digital information right now so that they will be able to help our future generations understand what is happening in our day and age? And there's a lot of questions that come up because if you have a document that was basically written on a word processing program, will that program be working in about another 20, 30 years? That document, are we able to read it in a future program, or will it be lost to history? And these are all big ideas that people are trying to figure out. A lot of historians are concerned about what is going to happen to our information. So now, a lot of items are donated to libraries and archives, and even personal items to family members. And a lot of times, they will come to us like this. They will be in a suitcase and they will be just a mess, or there's no organization, or let's say they're in a box that was found in an attic, or even a shoebox full of photos that were found in a closet. And it's pretty common for these things to be passed on in this condition. But now we are discovering that a lot of our items that will be passed on will be on computer programs or media or devices that may not work. And or let's say we have to figure out, what do we do with the digital stuff? And as you can see, this is a Commodore computer. It was popular in the 1980s, and it used a floppy drive with a floppy disk, and So if a library or a family member got one of those floppy disks and they had no way to read it, then we don't know what's on there and we cannot retrieve it. So we have to be prepared for something to do with that information. Do we can either find a device to read it, which might be difficult, or what we can do now is be able to plan on how we're going to pass on those digital files. So, the next couple of minutes, we are going to be talking about digital devices and their value. Now, this is the first slide here is from a 2013 digital asset survey. It was done by McAfee, and I did look for a more current survey, but it has not been done yet. So these numbers have probably changed. Now, this says we're obsessed with digital devices. Nearly 90% of us worldwide own multiple digital devices. We're talking smartphones, tablets, laptops, and so on and so on. 71% of us own at least one laptop. 63% own a smartphone, and that number has probably gone up because smartphones are a little more and more common and more people are adopting them. And then finally, 23% of men own more than 5 devices, and 17% of women own more than 5 devices. Again, that number has probably changed. I expect that number to go up. So now we are going to look at this is an article that came out a couple of years ago, and they did some surveys on different age groups and how they embrace technology and use technology. Now, the on the left, there's a graph, and it shows that older adults can be slower than others to embrace technology. That's not always the case, but when you look at the different age groups, they are slower to be more comfortable with using it. It's not necessarily that they are not open to it. It's just that they have to get used to using it. So these different age groups, as you can see, 18 to 29 years old, they're at the top. 65 years and older are at the bottom. And again, the next survey results will show that even though the 65 years and older are slower to embrace it, when they do use technology, they use it a lot more than other age groups. So on the right, it says that average mobile app usage by age among smartphone users, 18 to 24, they have 25.6 million, about 24 apps used per month. But when you look at 55 years and older, that number jumps. 48.6% of users 55 years and older use apps, and they use an average of 23.7. So again, the older generation, they do use technology a lot, and it's all because once they get used to it, they become more comfortable, and because they use a lot of the technology, they end up with a lot of digital stuff. Now, when we think of digital estates or digital items, we don't think that there's a dollar value to it. But the same 2013 digital asset survey discovered that your stuff is worth over $35,000. We're talking videos, we're talking photos, we're talking papers. And a lot of the reason why there is a value to it is because a lot of your personal data is bought and traded and sold from a lot of internet entities. We're talking social media will sell your metrics to, let's say, a company that wants to target a product that they think that you will buy. And so there's a digital marketplace for your personal items. And as a result, we can assign a dollar value to it. So now we're going to get into the legal landscape part of this. Now, I do have to remind you, I am not a lawyer, but all this information comes from lawyers who are specializing in navigating the digital estate planning landscape. So this is a website. I would definitely look at it if you can. And this has a list of digital estate planning laws. Now, digital estate planning laws are a fairly recent occurrence because it's not quite the same as planning your estate by having a will or a living will or so on and so on. You can't just lump that into what we consider a usual planning for your for handing over your things. So lawyers have to navigate this whole new basically environment on what do you do. So this website will give you all the laws that you need to look at. The next one is called the Uniform Law Commission, and this will has all the legislation in regard to digital estate planning nationwide. Now, the biggest piece of legislation that has occurred recently is called the Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act. And so again, we think of it as the Wild West frontier of what do you do with your stuff. Now, they have to pass legislation so that there are protections for your digital items, and it gives you a roadmap of what to do when you want to pass that down for future generations. So definitely look at this website, and it will link directly to the legislation and will tell you what it entails. Now we're going to talk about what can be in a digital estate. Now, when we think of stuff, we think of photos, videos, documents. It's a very hard to define definition or area. So this will help. Well, this will help you understand what digital estate planning is. So, when we talk about digital estate planning, we are talking about digital assets and digital accounts. What does that mean? So, first one, digital assets. These are emails, documents, images, audio, and video. A lot of these will be, shared on social media or emailed. So these it's a digital version of what we consider a lot of personal correspondence with traditional archived items. And so, because in a traditional archive, we have letters, we have photos, we have oral interviews, and so on and so on. These are just the digital versions of that. Now, digital accounts is something entirely different because we have email accounts. So you have to plan for who has access to your email when you're no longer around. What about software licenses? Financial management accounts? Social media accounts is a big one, and file sharing accounts. So these are more of the vehicle on how to access your digital assets, and you have to plan for who will have access to those. So here is a handy digital asset management checklist. I would definitely look at this and use this as a way to plan for what you're going to do. Now, the first one is identify and make an inventory of your digital content on your personal, remote, and cloud accessing devices. Include email, social websites, and other important online accounts. Provide the name of your intended heir, what type of access rights, and your final wishes for each asset. And there is a template, and there will be a link later on, and definitely use that to help plan. Next one, back up your devices and data. If you use online backup service websites, remember to add these accounts to your inventory list. State your final digital asset wishes in your will or in a digital addendum to your will or estate plan. Use digital estate planning services, posthumous email services, or ask your digital executor or heirs to carry out your final wishes after your death. Ensure that your loved ones have the permission and access credentials to access the accounts you choose by reviewing your online account sites, terms of service for transferring access to others after your death. And then finally, communicate your final wishes directly to your loved ones, digital executor, or heirs. Now, we had talked about making an inventory, and this will help you this will give you a template and an idea of what to do. And so you can use a simple spreadsheet to do this, and you can list everything. We're talking digital assets, digital accounts, and we will be going through these as we go on. So here are tips for preparing your digital assets. We are going to be talking about computers and digital devices, social media, and in this case, we will be talking about Facebook, and we will be talking about mobile devices. So the first item are digital devices, and this example is a Dell Latitude laptop, and this is pretty common where we have a home computing device that will have a lot of our information. And so for the checklist, we will list location, where it's at. In this case, it's a laptop. Digital assets, you have to specify what you want to pass on. Documents folder and pictures folder are on this one. Terms of use, there are none because this is your own personal device. Include a username and password. List a beneficiary and list your wishes. So you can say may access and distribute for, let's say, your digital assets that you had listed on earlier in the document. And or you may say, may access and distribute documents folder, but do not access and distribute the pictures folder. So you have to state what your wishes are. So some helpful tips for your digital assets on, let's say, a laptop or is delete what you don't want to give. Create consistent file names. This is very helpful because when you're trying to locate items, you want to make sure that the file names, that there's some kind of order that they know what that item is. So for example, I use a tax service online, and when I do my taxes every year, I can download a copy of my tax return. So I download, let's say, a copy, and I name it 2018 tax return. And then the next year it would be 2019 tax return. So it's consistent, and it gives you an idea of what that document is. You can add tags. Usually you can do that by right-clicking on the item, and you could add tags that give more information. And this is helpful for a lot of photos. When was the photo taken? Who's in the photo? And so on and so on. A lot of this information will help your heirs or your digital executor know what is in the items. And then finally, save a guide to the desktop. You could use a simple WordPad or Notepad document, and I would say title it Read Me. And a lot of archives do this because you could write down what the guide is. So you could say, but the documents for all my financial documents are in this folder. All my personal documents are on this folder. You could also explain why you named the files that you did. And also you could basically give an idea for whoever inherits these items. They can use that as a way to interpret and find the items that you want to pass on. Next up is Facebook. Now for Facebook, again, use the same template. There's a few differences though. So the location, which is a social media account, it'll be online. You could just say Facebook or, let's say Instagram or so on and so on. Digital assets, you would have to list what are the items on your social media account that you want to pass on. Terms of use, you can choose a legacy account on Facebook, and we will be going over that shortly. And but definitely read the terms of use on what do you do with your social media account. Um, Username, password, again, beneficiary, and then the wishes. Because Facebook, you have to agree to their terms of use. So you have to read those, the terms of use, to determine what you can or can't do with your digital assets on Facebook. So, always a helpful hint, read the terms of service and ensure your loved ones have permission to access your account after death. Now, we're going to talk about creating a legacy account. So, if you're on Facebook and when you log in, when you go to the upper right hand side, there is a drop down menu, and a lot of us will use that to log out of Facebook. So what you do is you can look at the settings, and now if you click on that, it'll bring up another menu of various things, and you can choose memorialization settings. You select that, and then it'll bring up what's called your legacy contact. So it'll tell you when you choose a legacy contact, it'll tell you what that person can do with your account. And if you are choosing a legacy contact, I would recommend choosing someone that would have your best interest in your digital assets, and also someone that will is reliable and will be there to take care of it. So I'm talking family members, friends. You can do a spouse or partner if you would like, but also keep in mind that you have to plan for will that person be there for the long haul. So again, definitely choose wisely and let them know that you are making them a legacy contact and go over this information with them. Now, a lot of this information is from a book called The After Steps Guide to the Internet After Death. And there is a digital copy online that you can find. I would definitely seek that out. It would give you a lot of information on planning your digital estate. Finally, we are going to talk about mobile devices. So the example here is an iPhone 4S. You can list what the digital assets are: pictures, text messages, voicemails, and you can do emails, so on and so on, videos. Terms of use, there really isn't one. Username, unless you log in with an email account, there may or may not be one. And then a password. And I would say mobile devices, they have various security features. And so if there's a biometric function, such as face recognition or let's say a fingerprint scanner, make sure that that you do establish a password or a PIN number as a backup, so that whoever inherits your mobile device can access that information. And again, beneficiary, list who you want to take care of that, and definitely state your wishes. So again, this is a common thread: delete what you don't want to give. Back up your phone, and a lot of these mobile devices, they give you options for doing that. So if you have an iPhone, you can usually back it up to your let's say the iCloud. If you have an Android phone, then you could actually back it up to Google servers. And then don't forget to add descriptive file names and tags once you transfer. And again, because a lot of the photos, for example, when you take them on a mobile device, they don't say, hey, this photo was taken at the General Sherman tree in Sequoia National Park on this date, and these are the people in them. Um, you can go in and you can add that in later, because if you have a photo and there's no information, again, you don't know how to interpret that. You have to track down who's in the photo. There is some metadata to help you find out when was it taken. But if you are able to add the descriptive file names and tags, that will help out whoever inherits your mobile device. And I would say definitely change the file names on the photos, because by default, your mobile device will just have a bunch of numbers on front of the photo. And you look at it now, you go, oh, yeah, I know where it was taken, or I know what data was taken. But if you can change the file names once you back up your phone, and that way you don't have this DSC0001, you can just say, let's say General Sherman tree, and then add a date. And that will help whoever inherits your mobile device on what that photo is. So now we are going to talk about the digital addendum statement. Choose a digital executor, and again, look at the information about the legislation about digital assets, and it'll give you some information on how to format this. And we'll talk about some language on how to do that here shortly. So choose a digital executor. Give power to your digital executor to handle your digital assets and or accounts, and then walk them through your inventory and wishes, because that way they are aware of where your devices are, how do you access your accounts, and be clear on what your wishes are. Otherwise, they either will be unable to get your digital assets and accounts, or they won't know what to do with them. And then ask them for help in facilitating a transfer. So here's some sample language. I have prepared a memorandum with instructions concerning my digital assets and their access, handling, distribution, and disposition. I direct my executor and beneficiaries to follow my instructions concerning my digital assets. Here's some more sample language. My executor shall have the power to access, handle, distribute, and dispose of my digital assets. And here is our digital asset management checklist again. Definitely look at that. There is a link for right here, yourdigitalafterlife.com/resources. And so this will give you like a template for your inventory. And keep this in mind when you're planning for what you're going to do with your stuff. Now, as for resources, here are some books. And again, there's Your Digital Afterlife. A lot of this information was taken from this book. It was written by two lawyers, Evan Carroll and John Romano. I would definitely seek that out if you can, if you have more questions. Here's another book, Personal Archiving, Preserving Our Digital Heritage. As for websites, the top one, the Digital Beyond, last time I checked, it was not available. I'm hoping that it comes back up soon. Definitely look at the Library of Congress. They have a lot of information on digital preservation. And then, of course, the DC Public Library Memory Lab. They have a lot of helpful information there too. And the next slide is, since we don't have our memory lab in the Annie R. Mitchell History Room quite yet, here's a photo of the memory lab at the DC Public Library. So keep an eye on our social media channels, and when the memory lab is open, then we would have more information on how to use it. There's some training and some paperwork that you need to do before you use it. But overall, it's a great resource, especially if you have these old videotapes lying around and you want to be able to transfer them to something else. Because in the next 10 years or so, a lot of those videotapes will quit working. So we are trying to plan for that eventuality where a lot of these videotapes will be inaccessible. And there are some Q&A. Now, because this is a online workshop, leave your questions in the comments, and I will do the best that I can to answer them. And again, keep an eye on our social media channels, and I hope you learned something. And again, have a good day and take care.